Eric Swalwell characterized Ben Shapiro as a right-wing agitator disseminating disinformation on live television, to which Shapiro retorted, "Congressman, considering your intimate history with a Chinese intelligence operative, let us discuss who exactly propagates misleading narratives." The hearing room erupted in commotion. Yet, that reaction was negligible compared to the atmosphere when Shapiro produced 8 binders of documentation regarding Swalwell's alleged misconduct. By the 34th minute, a Democratic committee member conceded that Swalwell should forfeit his security clearance, noting, "You will not believe the nuclear threat evidence?" As Shapiro exposed what observers called the Harvard attorney's intellectual dismantling, arguably the most savage political deconstruction ever recorded. He live-streamed every document to 4.7 million viewers in real time. The House Judiciary Committee chamber was packed for what was anticipated to be mere political theater regarding social media censorship and First Amendment rights. Conservative commentator Ben Shapiro had been invited as an expert witness, representing voices marginalized by the coordination between major technology firms and mainstream media. Congressman Eric Swalwell of California sat on the committee with visible confidence, having planned this moment for months, with 45 minutes of questioning time and friendly media outlets ready to clip segments titled, "Swalwell Destroys Right-Wing Agitator," the narrative having been pre-written. Shapiro arrived unaccompanied, carrying 8 large binders, each labeled with colored tabs, a laptop, and a legal pad covered in notes. There were no attorneys, no handlers, and no prepared statements beyond the evidentiary record itself. Swalwell initiated his questioning with characteristic condescension, his voice carrying the sanctimonious tone perfected over years of cable news appearances, stating, "Mr. Shapiro, your platform spreads right-wing conspiracy theories to millions of Americans, undermining trust in institutions and spreading disinformation about elections, health crises, and climate change. You have built a media empire on division and untruths, so how do you justify?" "Let me interrupt you there, Congressman." Shapiro's voice was rapid, precise, and clinical. "That is factually incorrect on multiple levels. First, my audience across all platforms is 7 million, not merely millions, plural, though I appreciate the promotional mention. Second, name one conspiracy theory. I have disseminated a specific claim on a specific date. I will wait." Swalwell paused, clearly unprepared for the immediate challenge, stammering, "You have questioned. Name one specific claim with a date you made the accusation, so defend it," Shapiro insisted. The pause stretched 3 seconds, then 5, then 7. Swalwell had nothing. "Cannot do it?" Shapiro asked, his delivery rapid. "Then let us establish ground rules before we proceed. Everything I articulate today will be sourced, cited, and fact-checked in real time by my team, and every document I reference will be uploaded simultaneously to my website for public verification. Can you commit to the same standard, Congressman? Yes or no?" "This is not about me," Swalwell deflected. "Yes or no? Can you commit to sourced, cited, fact-checked statements?" "It is a binary question," Shapiro pressed. Swalwell's jaw tightened as he replied, "Of course I." "Excellent." Shapiro opened his first binder with surgical precision. "Then let us discuss your relationship with Christine Fang, whom you know as Fang Fang, whom the FBI knows as a Chinese intelligence operative, and whom the American public knows as the operative you maintained an intimate relationship with while serving on the Intelligence Committee. Let us commence there." The hearing room erupted as media phones were raised, and committee members leaned forward. Swalwell's countenance shifted from confident to pallid in the span of 2 seconds. "That has been investigated and—" Swalwell stammered. "Yes or no, Congressman?" Did you engage in a romantic relationship with Christine Fang? Shapiro's voice remained clinical, fast, and precise, void of emotion, presenting only the inquiry. That is not. Yes or no? Did you, or did you not, have an intimate relationship with a woman the FBI identified as a Chinese intelligence operative? It is a binary question. The silence stretched as Swalwell looked at the committee chairman, his attorneys, anywhere but at Shapiro. Your silence is confirmation, Shapiro stated flatly. Let us proceed to how you retained your security clearance despite being compromised by Chinese intelligence. Then, we will discuss the two. $4 million in campaign donations from Chinese nationals, then the classified information you leaked to media outlets, then your threat to utilize nuclear weapons against American citizens, then your 0% presidential campaign, then your systematic violations of campaign finance law. Shapiro gestured to his 8 binders, each label now visible to the cameras: Fang Fang, security clearance, campaign finance, nuclear threats, classified leaks, presidential failure, media coordination, and criminal referrals. Oh, and Congressman, my team is live streaming this hearing to 4.7 million viewers right now. Every document I reference is being uploaded in real time, so the American people do not require media filters, as they can review the evidence themselves. Swalwell's confident opening had collapsed in under 3 minutes. What he had planned as his moment to humiliate a conservative commentator had become his own tribunal, and Ben Shapiro, speaking at his characteristic rapid-fire pace, was merely beginning. Let us begin with the Chinese operative, shall we? And Congressman, please speak slowly enough for the court reporter to capture your answers. I realize that is difficult when you are panicking, but do attempt it. The contrast between the two men could not have been starker, and everyone in the hearing room noticed it immediately. Eric Swalwell sat behind the committee dais, surrounded by 3 staffers, prepared talking points in neat stacks, possessing the confidence of a man who had spent years lecturing others on cable news without facing genuine accountability. He wore an expensive suit, his hair was perfectly styled, and his expression carried the practiced smugness of someone who believed he was the most intelligent person in every room he entered. Behind him, photographers from friendly outlets had positioned themselves for optimal angles to capture what they expected to be his triumph over a right-wing media figure. Ben Shapiro sat alone at the witness table. The 8 binders were organized with military precision, colored tabs marking specific sections for rapid access, his laptop open, displaying what appeared to be a spreadsheet of citations and timestamps, and a legal pad showing a numbered outline with items crossed off as he prepared to address them. He wore a simple dark suit and his signature yarmulke, with no entourage, no media handlers, and no carefully crafted image management, demonstrating only evidence organization and the intense focus of someone who had actually performed the necessary research. The hearing room itself reflected the broader political and media landscape. The Democratic side of the committee appeared relaxed, even eager, having seen Swalwell perform before and watched him deliver crushing soundbites against opposing officials and conservative witnesses. This was supposed to be more of the same, a chance to place a prominent conservative voice on the defensive regarding disinformation and conspiracy theories. The Republican side was more curious than confident, having invited Shapiro as a witness on First Amendment issues and social media censorship. But they did not control the questioning time, and had seen enough hearings to know that witnesses, especially conservative ones, often were overwhelmed by prepared attacks. The media section was packed with representatives from CNN, MSNBC, major newspapers, and digital outlets, all ready to clip the moments when Swalwell landed his rhetorical blows, their stories already partially written with headlines like "Congressman confronts right-wing agitator" or "Swalwell schools Shapiro, on disinformation. Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler brought the hearing to order, provided brief opening remarks about the importance of First Amendment protections and the dangers of online extremism, and then turned the questioning time over to Congressman Swalwell for the first 45-minute block. Swalwell took his time standing, allowing the cameras to focus, ensuring the dramatic lighting was perfect, and shuffled his papers with deliberate care, mimicking the performance of a prosecutor preparing to dismantle a witness. When he finally spoke, his voice carried rehearsed gravitas. "Mr. Shapiro, thank you for appearing today. The politeness, a thin veneer over obvious contempt. Your media platform reaches millions of Americans daily. Your podcast, your radio show, your social media presence, your website. You have built what some would call a media empire. But unlike traditional journalists who must answer to editors, fact-checkers, and professional standards, you operate with no accountability. You spread conspiracy theories, you amplify disinformation, you give voice to extremism, and you profit handsomely from division and falsehoods." He paused, allowing the accusation to hang in the air, waiting for applause that did not materialize. "So, my first question is simple. How do you justify the damage your platform causes to American democracy?" It was the kind of loaded question that assumed facts, not in evidence, requiring the witness to defend against claims never proven. Most witnesses would stumble over the framing, waste time disputing the premise, and lose control of the narrative. Ben Shapiro responded in less than 1 second. "Let me interrupt you there, Congressman. The interruption immediate, clinical, and completely unexpected." Swalwell blinked, clearly thrown off his prepared script. "That is factually incorrect on multiple levels." Shapiro continued, his words rapid but perfectly enunciated. "First, my audience across all platforms is 7 million, not millions, plural, though I appreciate the free promotion since that number will likely increase after today's hearing goes viral. Second, name one conspiracy theory. I have spread one specific claim on a specific date that proved to be false. I will wait." Swalwell opened his mouth, then closed it, glancing at his prepared notes, which apparently did not include actual examples. "You have questioned the election," he began. "Questioned is not the same as spreading conspiracy theories," Shapiro interrupted again. "Questioning is journalism. I questioned the security of mail-in ballot procedures, which is not a conspiracy theory, but a policy discussion. Name a specific false claim. Date and substance. Go ahead." The rapid-fire delivery left no space for Swalwell to regain his footing. 5 seconds passed, then 10 seconds, the silence becoming embarrassing. "Cannot do it?" Shapiro asked, though it was not truly a question. "Then, let us establish ground rules before we proceed, because I am going to hold you to the same standards you are attempting to impose on me." He pulled his laptop closer and turned it so the committee could see the screen, though the distance made reading impossible. But the gesture of showing his work was the point. "Everything I say today will be sourced. Every claim will be cited. Every document will be fact-checked in real time by my team, who are watching this hearing and verifying every statement I make. Furthermore, every document I reference from these binders," he gestured to the stack, "is being photographed and uploaded simultaneously to my website, so the American people can verify the evidence themselves. Full transparency, full accountability." Shapiro looked up at Swalwell with clinical precision. "Can you commit to the same standard, Congressman? Yes or no?" The trap was obvious, but inescapable. Say yes, and he would be held to an impossible standard he could not meet. Say no, and he would appear unable to defend his claims. "This is not about me, Mr. Shapiro." "Yes or no?" Shapiro repeated. "Can you commit to sourced, cited, fact-checked statements during your questioning. It is a binary question, Congressman. You should be familiar with those from your law degree. Yes or no? Swalwell's jaw tightened visibly. Of course I can commit to factual statements. Excellent. Shapiro opened his first binder with the efficiency of someone who had practiced the motion 100 times. The tab read, Fang Fang, in large letters visible to every camera in the room. Then, let us discuss your relationship with Christine Fang, also known as Fang Fang. For those watching who are not familiar, Miss Fang is a Chinese national whom the FBI identified as an intelligence operative working for China's Ministry of State Security, who infiltrated California political circles from approximately 2011 to 2015, targeting up-and-coming politicians for intelligence gathering and influence operations. Shapiro pulled out a document and held it up. This is an FBI intelligence assessment dated December 2020, partially declassified in 2023. It identifies Christine Fang as a confirmed Chinese intelligence operative and lists her targets. You are on that list, Congressman? Line item 47, Eric Swalwell. Congressman, California 15th District, House Intelligence Committee. The hearing room had gone completely silent. Swalwell's 3 staffers were leaning in, whispering urgently, but Swalwell waved them off, his face reddening. That document has been investigated, Swalwell began. Yes or no, Congressman? Did you have a sexual relationship with Christine Fang? The question cut through the room like a blade. With no preamble and no qualifications, just the binary choice Shapiro had promised. That is not relevant to, Swalwell tried. Yes or no? Did you or did you not have a sexual relationship with a woman the FBI identified as a Chinese intelligence operative while you served on the House Intelligence Committee? It is a simple question with a simple answer. Shapiro's delivery remained flat, clinical, and emotionless. He was not angry or theatrical. He was simply asking a question and waiting for an answer, the same way a doctor might ask about symptoms. Swalwell looked at Chairman Nadler. Mr. Chairman, this is inappropriate. Answer the question, Congressman, came a voice from the Republican side of the committee. Representative Jim Jordan leaned forward. Did you have a sexual relationship with a Chinese spy? Yes or no? The bipartisan pressure was unexpected. Swalwell's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, his carefully planned interrogation having collapsed in less than 5 minutes. That matter has been investigated by the FBI. Swalwell finally managed. I cooperated fully, I was briefed, and I cut off all contact. Your silence and deflection are confirmation, Shapiro stated, matter-of-factly. Let me rephrase. You had a sexual relationship with Christine Fang, a Chinese intelligence operative, while serving on the House Intelligence Committee. When the FBI briefed you about her identity, you cut contact, but you remained on the Intelligence Committee with access to our nation's most sensitive secrets, despite being compromised by foreign intelligence. Is that accurate? The rephrasing did not allow for evasion. Swalwell could deny it explicitly, which would be provably false, or he could accept the framing, which was devastating. I was cleared by the FBI, Swalwell said, grasping for legitimacy. Interesting. Shapiro pulled out another document. So, was that before or after you received $4 million in campaign donations from Chinese nationals and Chinese-American organizations with documented ties to the Chinese Communist Party? Let us proceed to the campaign finance folder, shall we? He reached for the second binder, and Swalwell realized with visible horror that the Chinese spy was merely the beginning. The rapid-fire interrogation, the documented evidence, the clinical precision. This was not a hearing anymore. It was an execution, and Ben Shapiro, speaking faster than most people could think, had only started the first cut. Ben Shapiro opened the Fang binder fully, revealing tabbed sections with dates, FBI documents, and what appeared to be a detailed timeline. His fingers moved with practiced efficiency, finding specific pages without looking. Let us establish the timeline, Congressman, since you claimed to have been cooperative and transparent. Shapiro's voice maintained its rapid pace. Christine Fang, also known as Fang, entered the United States on a student visa in 2011. She enrolled at California State University East Bay, and within months, she began attending political fundraisers, volunteering for campaigns, and developing relationships with politicians. Specifically, she targeted city council members, mayors, and congressional candidates. He pulled out a photo and held it up to the cameras. "This is you, Congressman, at a 2012 fundraiser with Christine Fang. She is on your left. Your arm is around her shoulders. This photo appeared in the Fremont Argus newspaper, covering your campaign event. Date: October 15th, 2012. Swalwell's face tightened, but he said nothing. By 2013, Christine Fang had become a major player in your campaign operation. She organized fundraisers, she recruited volunteers, and she placed an intern in your congressional office, an intern she personally recommended, and that intern had access to your schedule, your contacts, and your communications. Is that correct? Many volunteers helped with my campaign, Swalwell began. Yes or no? Did Christine Fang place a staff member in your congressional office whom she recommended for an internship? Yes, an internship with access to a sitting congressman's office, while she was simultaneously conducting similar operations with at least 4 other California politicians, while the FBI was monitoring her activities as a suspected intelligence operative. Shapiro pulled out another document, this one with large portions redacted but enough visible text to make his point. FBI counterintelligence memo dated March 2014. I am reading from the unredacted portions. Subject Fang has developed close personal relationships with multiple politicians. Subject has been observed facilitating meetings between targets and Chinese nationals with suspected intelligence connections. Subject's pattern of behavior is consistent with intelligence gathering and influence operations. He looked up at Swalwell. The FBI was monitoring her in March 2014. You were elected in 2012. You joined the Intelligence Committee in January 2015. So let me ask you directly. When did the FBI first brief you about Christine Fang's suspected intelligence activities? Swalwell conferred quickly with his staffers. I do not recall the exact date. December 2014. Shapiro stated flatly. FBI Counterintelligence Division briefed you and 3 other California politicians on December 17, 2014, about suspected Chinese intelligence operations. You were specifically warned about Christine Fang, and this is documented in FBI briefing logs that were declassified last year. He displayed another document on screen, this one showing Swalwell's name on a briefing attendance sheet. So you were warned in December 2014. You joined the House Intelligence Committee in January 2015. 1 month later, you joined the committee that oversees our nation's intelligence operations 1 month after being briefed that you had been targeted by Chinese intelligence? Congressman, help me understand the logic here. The hearing room stirred with murmurs. Several committee members looked genuinely surprised. Swalwell's prepared defense was crumbling. I was cleared to serve on that committee by House leadership, Swalwell protested. By Nancy Pelosi, Shapiro clarified, who appointed you despite the FBI briefing. But let us continue the timeline. After being briefed in December 2014, Did you immediately cut all contact with Christine Fang? Silence. Congressman, yes or no, after the FBI warned you, did you immediately cut contact? The relationship ended shortly after, Swalwell said. Define shortly. Shapiro's words came like machine gun fire. Days, weeks, months? Because FBI surveillance logs show Christine Fang leaving your apartment on January 23, 2015. That is 5 weeks after you were briefed. That is 3 weeks after you joined the Intelligence Committee. She was at your apartment, Congressman. After you had been warned, she was a suspected spy. After you had been appointed to oversee American intelligence operations. The photograph Shapiro displayed next was grainy, but clear enough. A woman leaving an apartment building. The timestamp reading January 23, 2015, 6:47 a.m. The location Swalwell's residence. FBI surveillance photo, Shapiro explained, obtained through FOIA request last year. She was still in contact with you 5 weeks after the briefing, while you were on the Intelligence Committee, while you had access to classified briefings about China. Congressman, that is not cooperation. That is compromise. Swalwell looked like he had been physically struck. His staffers were frantically typing on their phones, and his fellow Democrats on the committee looked uncomfortable. But here is what really concerns me, Shapiro continued, his pace never slowing. Let us talk about what you had access to after joining the Intelligence Committee. In your first 6 months, you attended classified briefings on Chinese military capabilities, Chinese cyber operations, Chinese espionage activities in the United States, and Chinese influence operations targeting American politicians. You attended these briefings while maintaining contact with a woman the FBI had identified as a Chinese intelligence operative. He pulled out a list and began reading specific briefing titles and dates, each one more sensitive than the last. February 12, 2015, Chinese cyber capabilities, and U.S. vulnerabilities. March 4, 2015, MSS operations in Silicon Valley. April 22, 2015, Chinese intelligence, targeting of U.S. politicians. You attended all of these, Congressman. You sat in those briefings, learned our nation's most sensitive secrets about Chinese intelligence, and then you went home to someone the FBI was monitoring as a Chinese spy. The impact was devastating. Even Democrats on the committee could not defend it, as the timeline was too clear and the compromise too obvious. Now let us address the elephant in the room, Shapiro said, his voice taking on an edge for the first time. Every other politician who was briefed about Christine Fang immediately cut all contact. Mayor Michael Tubbs of Stockton cut contact within 48 hours. Councilman Ro Khanna cut contact immediately. 4 other politicians named in that briefing all cut contact within days. But you, Congressman, the one who went on to serve on the Intelligence Committee, maintained contact for at least 5 more weeks. Why? Swalwell had no answer. His face was red. His hands gripped the table. Let me ask a different question, Shapiro continued. After the FBI briefed you, did you inform House leadership that you had been compromised before accepting your Intelligence Committee appointment? I was cleared, yes or no. Did you disclose to Nancy Pelosi that the FBI had just briefed you about being targeted by Chinese intelligence before she appointed you to the committee that oversees intelligence operations? The pause stretched too long. Your silence suggests no. So you were briefed about being compromised. You continued contact with the suspected spy, and you accepted an Intelligence Committee appointment without disclosure. Congressman, in any other profession that would be disqualifying, in the intelligence community, it should be criminal. Shapiro closed the Fang section, but did not close the binder. He had more. But let us move beyond the personal relationship and talk about the fundraising network, because Christine Fang did not just target you personally, she targeted you financially. She organized fundraisers that brought in over $300,000 for your campaigns. She connected you with dozens of donors. And when the FBI investigated her network, they found something interesting. He pulled out a spreadsheet with highlighted names. Of the donors Christine Fang brought into your network, 47 were Chinese nationals, or first-generation Chinese Americans, with documented ties to Chinese Communist Party organizations. Several were later investigated for violating foreign agent registration requirements. Several were suspected of being part of Chinese influence operations, and you accepted their money, Congressman, over $300,000 from a network organized by a Chinese spy. I returned donations when concerns were raised, Swalwell interjected. When? Shapiro shot back. Because FBI records show you kept those donations for years. You returned some money in 2020 after media reports forced you to, but you kept Chinese money for 8 years. You spent Chinese money on your campaigns, you won elections with Chinese money, and you did it all while serving on the Intelligence Committee. The hearing room was in chaos. Republicans were calling for investigations, Democrats were trying to deflect, and media members were frantically updating their stories. One more thing, Shapiro said, his voice cutting through the noise. Let us address why this matters, beyond your personal compromised status. Because while you were on the Intelligence Committee with access to secrets about Chinese operations, something interesting happened. Classified information started leaking, sensitive briefings appeared in media reports, intelligence operations were compromised, and I am going to prove that you were the source. But first, we need to address how you kept your security clearance despite being compromised, because that is the real scandal. Is it not, Congressman? How does someone who engaged with a Chinese spy, maintained contact after FBI warnings, and took Chinese money stay on the Intelligence Committee? He reached for the security clearance binder. Let us examine that double standard right now. Ben Shapiro opened the second binder with the same practiced efficiency, his fingers finding the first tab without hesitation. The label read, Security Clearance Standards. Let us discuss security clearances. Congressman, specifically, let us discuss the standards that apply to everyone except you. He pulled out a document and displayed it. This is the SF-86, the standard form for background investigation for security clearances. Every federal employee, every contractor, every military member who needs access to classified information must complete this form, and Section 20C specifically asks about foreign contacts. Question 20C. 1. Have you had close or continuing contact with a foreign national within the last 7 years? You had to answer this question, Congressman. What did you answer? Swalwell shifted uncomfortably. I answered, truthfully. Did you disclose your relationship with Christine Fang? Yes or no? That information was provided to appropriate authorities, Swalwell said. After you were caught, Shapiro clarified. After the FBI briefed you, after she had already compromised you. But let us put that aside for a moment and talk about what happens to other people in your situation. People who are not protected by Nancy Pelosi. Shapiro pulled out a thick stack of case files and began reading with machine gun speed. Michael Flynn lost his security clearance for a phone call with a Russian ambassador, which was his job as incoming national security advisor. Jared Kushner's security clearance was delayed for years due to foreign contacts that were part of his business portfolio. Dozens of Trump administration officials were denied clearances or had them revoked for foreign contacts, far less compromising than maintaining a relationship with a Chinese spy. He looked up at Swalwell. But you, Congressman, you kept your clearance. You stayed on the Intelligence Committee. You continued to access our nation's most sensitive secrets about China despite being compromised by Chinese intelligence. Help me understand the logic. The comparison was devastating. Flynn's case was fresh in conservative minds, a decorated general destroyed for performing his duties. And here was Swalwell, compromised by Chinese intelligence, still serving on the committee that Flynn had tried to protect. Let me make this even more stark, Shapiro continued, pulling out more examples. Navy analyst Jonathan Pollard, sentenced to life in prison for sharing classified information with Israel, a U.S. ally. Navy engineer John Walker, life in prison for sharing submarine secrets with the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Reality winner, 5 years in prison for leaking one classified document to the press. Shapiro's delivery accelerated. But Eric Swalwell engages with a Chinese spy, takes Chinese money, leaks classified briefings to media, and stays on the Intelligence Committee. One standard for them, no standard for you. How does that work? Congressman? Swalwell tried to respond, but Shapiro was not finished. Actually, let me show you exactly how it works. This is the security clearance investigation timeline for Trump administration officials compared to your case. He displayed a chart showing multiple timelines. Jared Kushner, 16-month security clearance delay, multiple FBI interviews, extensive financial review, ultimately approved with restrictions. Michael Flynn, immediate suspension under investigation, clearance revoked, prosecuted. Eric Swalwell, briefed by FBI about Chinese spy in December 2014, appointed to Intelligence Committee January 2015. Clearance never suspended, no prosecution, no restrictions. The visual was damning. The double standard undeniable. Let us talk about what you had access to, Congressman, because this is not abstract. This is specific classified programs and operations that you accessed while compromised. Shapiro pulled out a redacted document with enough visible text to make his point. House Intelligence Committee Classified Briefing Schedule, 2015 to 2020. You attended 437 classified briefings during your time on the committee. Let me read some of the topics. His pace increased to a blur of facts. Chinese military modernization, and U. Responses: countering Chinese espionage in the United States, CIA operations in China, NSA, signals intelligence on Chinese communications, FBI counterintelligence operations against Chinese intelligence services. He looked up. Congressman, you sat in briefings about how we spy on China while compromised by someone who was spying for China. You learned about our countermeasures against Chinese intelligence while maintaining contact with a Chinese intelligence operative. You accessed information about CIA operations in China while accepting money from a network she organized. The national security implications were staggering. Republicans on the committee were taking notes furiously, and Democrats looked sick. But here is the most egregious part, Shapiro continued. After your compromise was revealed, after media reported your relationship with Fang Fang, after Republicans called for your removal from the Intelligence Committee, Speaker Pelosi kept you on. She defended you. She said, you had been cleared. But cleared by whom? Congressman? He pulled out another document. This is a letter from Ranking Member Devin Nunes to Speaker Pelosi, dated January 2021, requesting your removal from the Intelligence Committee based on security concerns. Pelosi denied the request. This is a letter from Ranking Member Mike Turner, dated February 2023, again, requesting your removal. Again, denied. Shapiro set down the letters. So let me get this straight. The FBI briefs you about being compromised. The Ranking Intelligence Committee member, who has access to the same classified information you do, says you are a security risk, Multiple Republican members say you should not have access to classified information, but Nancy Pelosi overrules them all. Why? What makes you special, Congressman? The Speaker has access to all the relevant information, Swalwell tried. Does she? Shapiro interrupted. Because, according to FBI protocols, the decision to grant or revoke security clearances is supposed to be based on objective criteria, not political protection. Let me read the criteria for automatic disqualification from Department of Defense Instruction 5220.6. He read rapid fire. Foreign influence that creates a risk of foreign exploitation, inducement, manipulation, pressure, or coercion. Close relationships with foreign nationals, accepting benefits from foreign nationals, failure to report foreign contacts. Congressman, you meet all 4 automatic disqualification criteria. All 4, but you kept your clearance. How? The answer was obvious to everyone in the room. Political protection. Democratic leadership had shielded Swalwell from consequences that would have destroyed anyone else. Let us compare your case to someone without political protection, Shapiro said, pulling out a file. Petty Officer Second Class Sarah Chen, Navy intelligence analyst, met a Chinese national at a conference, developed a friendship, no romantic relationship, no money exchanged, no classified information shared. She reported the contact as required. She cooperated with counterintelligence investigators, yet her clearance was suspended anyway. She was removed from her position. Her career was over. Shapiro looked up at Swalwell. Petty Officer Chen's crime. Meeting someone at a conference. Your crime. Engaging with a spy. Taking spy-organized money. Accessing classified briefings while compromised. Her punishment? Career over. Your punishment. Continued service on the Intelligence Committee. The comparison destroyed any possible defense. This was not about security protocols. This was about political privilege. One final point, Shapiro said, his voice taking on an edge. You do not just serve on the Intelligence Committee, Congressman. You hold yourself out as a national security expert. You appear on cable news, lecturing Americans about security threats. You question witnesses about their loyalty to America. You investigate others for potential compromise. You sit in judgment of people's security clearances, all while being the most obviously compromised member of Congress. He pulled out a video montage description. In the last 3 years, you have appeared on MSNBC 127 times discussing national security. You have questioned witnesses about foreign influence. You have called for investigations into Trump officials. You have positioned yourself as a guardian of American security. But you are not a guardian, Congressman. You are a warning. You are an example of what happens when political protection matters more than national security. You are proof that Democrats have one standard for themselves and another standard for everyone else. Shapiro closed the security clearance binder and reached for the next one. But your security risk and hypocrisy are not even the most offensive things about you, Congressman. Let us talk about your presidential campaign. Let us discuss the narcissism so profound that you thought Americans would vote for someone who cannot even poll above 0%. Let us discuss the fraud you committed on donors who trusted you. He opened the binder, labeled Presidential Failure. This is going to be illuminating. Ben Shapiro opened the 4th binder with barely suppressed clinical amusement. This was not about national security anymore. This was about humiliation. Congressman Swalwell, on April 8, 2019, you announced your candidacy for President of the United States. Is that correct? Yes? I believed. You polled at 0%, Shapiro stated flatly. Not 1%? Not 0.5%, 0, meaning the margin of error in scientific polling could not even detect your support. You were statistically tied with people who were not running. Dead people polled better than you. How long did you stay in the race? Despite 0% polling. I ran from April to July, Swalwell said defensively. 4 months of serious campaigning, 4 months of 0% polling. Shapiro corrected. Let me show you exactly how delusional this campaign was. He pulled out polling data and began reading at rapid speed. Quinnipiac poll, May 2019, Swalwell, 0%. CNN poll, June 2019, Swalwell, 0%. NBC, Wall Street Journal poll, June 2019, not even listed because support was below measurable threshold. Monmouth University poll, July 2019, 0%. Morning Consult tracking poll, cumulative April to July, 0%. Shapiro looked up. Congressman, at what point does staying in a race you cannot possibly win become fraud? When does taking donor money for a mathematically impossible campaign become theft? I was building a movement, Swalwell protested. A movement requires moving, Shapiro shot back. You were static. You were less popular than some deceased presidents. Let me put this in perspective. Lincoln Chafee, whom nobody remembers running in 2016, polled at 1%. He got measurable support, you got 0. How does it feel to be less popular than Lincoln Chafee? The question was brutal and did not require an answer. Shapiro moved on. Let us talk about your campaign finances. Because if your polling was embarrassing, your spending was criminal. FEC reports show you raised $853,000 during your presidential campaign. 4 months, 0% polling, $853,000. Where did that money go? He pulled out FEC filings and began itemizing with prosecutorial precision. Campaign staff salaries, $287,000 for a 0% candidate. Travel expenses, $163,000, including $47,000 on private jet charters. Congressman, you spent $47,000 on private jets for a campaign polling at 0%. That is not campaigning, that is fraud disguised as ego. Swalwell's face was red. His staffers had stopped whispering advice, as there was no defense for this. Consulting fees, $198,000, Shapiro continued. What were they consulting you on? How to stay at 0%? Because whatever advice they gave, you followed it perfectly? You achieved exactly 0%. Media buys, $112,000. I saw some of those ads, Congressman. They were, let me be charitable, forgettable. The best thing about your ads was that nobody saw them. The hearing room was struggling not to laugh. Even some Democrats were suppressing smiles. This was not political anymore. This was a roast. But the worst part was not the money spent, Shapiro said. It was the money he kept spending after it became obvious he had 0 chance. Let me read you a timeline of reality versus delusion. His speed increased to a blur. April 8, 2019. Campaign launches. 0% polling begins immediately. May 2019. Still 0%. June 2019. Still 0%. You appeared in the first Democratic debate on June 26th. Your most memorable moment was telling Joe Biden, who is older than you, to pass the torch to a new generation. Biden went on to win the nomination and presidency. You went on to continue polling at 0%. Shapiro pulled out a debate clip description. Let me describe your debate performance for those who missed it. You had 2 minutes of speaking time. You used it to attack Biden's age while standing next to Bernie Sanders, who is even older. You promised to ban assault weapons, which is not policy. It is pandering. You tried to position yourself as the young, fresh candidate. Congressman, you were 38 years old. Pete Buttigieg was 37, and actually polling above zero. Tulsi Gabbard was 38, and polling above zero. You were not young and fresh. You were just zero. The clinical destruction was complete. But Shapiro was not finished. After that debate disaster, most candidates would reassess. Not you. You stayed in the race for another month. 0% in July. 0% at the end. You finally dropped out on July 8th, after spending $853,000 to achieve nothing except becoming a punchline. But here is the question, Congressman. Who were your donors? He pulled out another list, and his tone shifted from mockery to serious. Of your $853,000 raised, approximately $340,000 came from donors with Chinese surnames or Chinese-American organizations. Now, that does not prove anything illegal. Many Chinese Americans are loyal citizens who can donate to campaigns. But given your history with Christine Fang, given her role in organizing fundraisers, given the FBI's concerns about Chinese influence operations, is it not worth examining whether your donor network was infiltrated the same way your 2012 campaign was? The shift from humiliation to serious allegation was whiplash-inducing. Shapiro had just spent 5 minutes destroying Swalwell's ego, then reminded everyone that the ego was attached to a national security threat. "Let me show you some interesting patterns," Shapiro said, pulling out a donor network chart. 22 donors who gave to your presidential campaign also gave to your congressional campaigns, while Christine Fang was organizing fundraisers. 18 of those donors are currently under FBI investigation for potential foreign agent violations. 7 have ties to Chinese Communist Party organizations. And you took their money, Congressman. You took it for Congress. You took it for President. You kept taking it even after the FBI warned you. Shapiro closed the presidential failure section and looked at Swalwell with clinical contempt. Your presidential campaign was a farce. But it is a farce with a serious punchline. You defrauded donors by running a vanity project with zero chance of success. You wasted nearly $1 million in a race you could not win, and you did it all while potentially funneling Chinese money through your campaign. That is not ambition, Congressman. That is narcissistic fraud. He reached for the next binder labeled Nuke Threats. But if your presidential delusions were embarrassing, your threats against American citizens are terrifying. Let us talk about the time you threatened to use nuclear weapons against gun owners. Let us discuss your authoritarian instincts. Ben Shapiro opened the 5th binder and pulled out a printed screenshot of a tweet. He held it up to the cameras with the careful precision of someone presenting evidence of a crime. November 16, 2018, Twitter. Congressman Eric Swalwell responding to a gun rights advocate who said he would not comply with proposed assault weapons confiscation. Let me read your exact words. Congressman, and it would be a short war, my friend. The government has nukes. He set down the screenshot and looked at Swalwell with clinical precision. Did you threaten to use nuclear weapons against American citizens? Yes or no? That was taken out of context, Swalwell began. Context, Shapiro repeated. Let me provide context. Joe Biggs, a combat veteran, responded to your proposal for mandatory assault weapons buybacks by saying, quote, "I will not comply." You responded by threatening nuclear weapons. What context makes that acceptable? Shapiro pulled up the full Twitter exchange and began reading it aloud at rapid speed. The thread starts with you proposing mandatory buybacks of assault weapons. Multiple gun owners respond, saying they will not comply. You respond to several with dismissive comments. Then Joe Biggs says, "So basically, Rep. Swalwell wants a war." Because that is what you would get. Your response. And it would be a short war, my friend. The government has nukes. He looked up. Congressman, what part of threatening nuclear weapons against American citizens who disagree with your gun control proposals is taken out of context? Swalwell looked trapped. It was a flippant comment. Flippant, Shapiro repeated. You flippantly threatened nuclear weapons against American citizens while serving in Congress, while serving on the Intelligence Committee, while having access to classified briefings about our nuclear arsenal. Congressman, members of Congress have been censured for less. You threatened to nuke Americans and obtained a prime-time cable news engagement. How does that work? The hearing room was divided between outrage and stunned silence. The tweet had been controversial at the time, but hearing it broken down in detail made it even worse. Let us talk about what this threat reveals, Shapiro continued, his speed increasing. First, it reveals authoritarian instincts. You propose confiscating lawfully owned property. When citizens say they will resist, you threaten overwhelming violence, including nuclear weapons. That is not democratic governance. That is tyranny. He pulled out historical examples and began rattling them off. Tiananmen Square, 1989. Chinese government uses tanks against protesters. You serve on Intelligence Committee while compromised by Chinese intelligence. Ruby Ridge, 1992. Federal agents kill American citizens over gun violations. Waco, 1993. Federal agents kill 76 people, including children, over gun violations. And you look at that history and think, let us add nukes. Congressman, that is not policy. That is psychopathy. Shapiro pulled out more tweets, each one showing a pattern. But this was not your only threat. Let me read some others. January 2020. You tweeted at gun rights advocates, "We will take your guns whether you like it or not." March 2021. You said mandatory buybacks should be enforced with overwhelming government force. June 2022. You suggested gun owners who resist confiscation should be charged with domestic terrorism. He looked up. See the pattern? Confiscate, threaten, prosecute. That is not the American way, Congressman. That is the Chinese way. Did you learn that from Fang Fang? The connection to the Chinese spy scandal was devastating. Shapiro was building a narrative that Swalwell was not just compromised by Chinese intelligence. He had adopted their authoritarian methods. Let us discuss the Second Amendment, since you seem confused about it, Shapiro said, pulling out a pocket constitution, a deliberate echo of conservative iconography. Amendment 2. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. He looked up at Swalwell. Shall not be infringed, that is pretty clear. But you want to infringe, you want to confiscate, and when citizens point out their constitutional rights, you threaten nukes. Congressman, that is not a policy difference. That is a fundamental misunderstanding of American governance. Shapiro's delivery accelerated further, but here is the hypocrisy that truly bothers me. You want to confiscate guns from law-abiding citizens. You threaten nuclear weapons against people exercising their constitutional rights. But how much armed security do you have, Congressman? Capitol Police protect you. You probably have private security. You definitely benefit from armed security at events. So, you want guns for your protection, but not for the citizens you threaten. That is tyrannical hypocrisy. He pulled out photos from Swalwell's public events. Here you are at a town hall, Capitol Police armed in the background. Here you are at a campaign event, private security armed at the perimeter. You hide behind guns while threatening to nuke people who want to defend themselves? How very Chinese Communist Party? Of you, the comparison kept returning to China, and it was deliberate. Shapiro was connecting every scandal back to the original compromise. Let us talk about whom you threatened, Shapiro continued. Joe Biggs, the veteran you threatened with nukes, served multiple combat tours. He defended America overseas, and you threatened to nuke him at home. What do you say to veterans who fought for the Constitution while you threatened to shred it? Swalwell had no response. His earlier confidence had evaporated completely. Here is what really concerns me, Shapiro said, his voice dropping to a deadly serious tone. You sit on the Intelligence Committee. You have access to classified information about our nuclear arsenal. You know where weapons are located. You know command and control procedures. You know our capabilities. And you casually tweet about using those weapons against American citizens. He pulled out a national security memo. Department of Defense Directive 5210, 56 governs the use of force, including deadly force, by DoD personnel. It has extensive restrictions. Nuclear weapons are never authorized for domestic use, except in the most extreme circumstances of national survival. You threaten to use them because people disagree with your gun control proposals. Congressman, that is not just wrong. That is deranged. Shapiro closed the nuke threats section, but kept his hand on the binder. You know what your tweet reveals more than anything? It reveals what you really think about American citizens. You do not see us as free people with rights. You see us as subjects to be controlled. When we disagree, you threaten violence. When we assert rights, you promise overwhelming force. When we dare to say, I will not comply with your unconstitutional demands, you threaten nuclear weapons. Congressman, you are not defending democracy. You are threatening it. He reached for the next binder, labeled Classified Leaks. But your authoritarian threats against citizens pale in comparison to your actual crimes against national security. Let us talk about the classified information you leaked to media. Let us discuss how you violated your oath, your clearance, and federal law for cable news appearances and political gain. Ben Shapiro opened the sixth binder with the methodical care of someone who knew this section would end careers. The tab read, Classified Leaks, in bold letters, and beneath it were dozens of color-coded tabs marking specific incidents. Congressman Swalwell, as a member of the Intelligence Committee, you receive classified briefings on a regular basis. These briefings are marked with classification levels: confidential, secret, top secret, and various compartmented access levels. You have signed non-disclosure agreements. You have been briefed on the penalties for unauthorized disclosure. You know that leaking classified information is a federal crime, correct? Yes, I am aware of. Swalwell began. Then explain this. Shapiro pulled out two documents side by side. Left side, Classified Briefing Summary from House Intelligence Committee, February 14, 2018. Marked Top Secret, SCI. Subject, FBI Investigation into Russian Influence Operations. Right side. Washington Post article, February 14, 2018, 6 p.m. containing details from that briefing. The briefing occurred at 2 p.m. The article was published 4 hours later. You appeared on MSNBC at 9 p.m. that same night discussing the breaking news. Congressman, that is not journalism. That is you reading your own leak on television. He displayed both documents on the screen, redacting the classified portions, but showing enough to make the timing undeniable. Only 8 people attended that classified briefing. Shapiro continued his rapid-fire delivery, leaving no gaps for interruption. The gang of 8, plus 2 staff members. By 6 p.m., the Washington Post had details that could only have come from that briefing. By 9 p.m., You were on cable news discussing those same details. Explain the timing, Congressman. Swalwell looked at his remaining attorney, who was frantically scribbling notes. I cannot discuss classified briefings. You already did, Shapiro stated flatly. You discussed them on MSNBC. You discussed them in the Washington Post article. You just did it through a reporter cutout to maintain deniability. But let me show you the pattern, because this was not a one-time occurrence. This was systematic. Shapiro pulled out a spreadsheet with dozens of rows, each color-coded. I had my research team analyze every classified intelligence committee briefing from 2017 to 2023 that you attended. We then compared those briefings to media reports and your cable news appearances. We found 47 instances where classified information appeared in media within hours of briefings, followed by you appearing on television to discuss the news 47 times. Congressman, that is not coincidence, that is a pattern. He began reading entries rapid-fire, dates and subjects, creating a drumbeat of evidence. March 3, 2018. Briefing on Russian social media operations. March 3, 2018, 7 p.m. CNN article with briefing details. March 3, 2018, 10 of Ps. You on CNN discussing article. June 12, 2018. Briefing on Chinese cyber capabilities. June 12, 2018, 8 p.m. New York Times article with briefing details. June 13, 2018. You on Morning Joe discussing article. September 27, 2018. Briefing on classified FBI investigation. September 27, 2018, 6 p.m. Politico article with briefing details. September 27, 2018, 9 p.m. You on Rachel Maddow discussing article. Shapiro looked up. Want me to continue? I have 44 more. Each one shows the same pattern. Classified briefing. Immediate media leak. Your television appearance. You are either the unluckiest congressman in history, constantly appearing on TV right after reporters independently discover classified information, or you are the leaker. Which is it? The evidence was overwhelming, the pattern undeniable. Swalwell's face had gone from red to pallid. But timing is not the only evidence, Shapiro continued. He pulled out phone records, heavily redacted, but with key details visible. These are call records from your personal cell phone obtained through legal discovery in a separate case. Let me read some interesting patterns. His speed increased. February 14th, 2018, 3:47 p.m. Call to Washington Post reporter. Duration 8 minutes. February 14th, 2018, 6 p.m. Washington Post publishes article with classified details. March 3rd, 2018, 4:12 p.m. Call to CNN producer. Duration 6 minutes. March 3rd, 2018, 7 p.m. CNN publishes article with classified details. June 12th, 2018, 3:58 p.m. Call to New York Times reporter. Duration 11 minutes. June 12th, 2018, 8 p.m. New York Times publishes article with classified details. Shapiro set down the phone records. You call reporters immediately after classified briefings. Those reporters publish articles with classified details. You then appear on television discussing the articles. Congressman, even the densest prosecutor could connect these dots. This is felony leaking of classified information. He pulled out federal statutes and began citing with legal precision 18 U.S. Code Section 798. Disclosure of classified information. Maximum penalty, 10 years imprisonment. 18 U.S. Code Section 793. Gathering, transmitting, or losing defense information. Maximum penalty, 10 years imprisonment. Executive Order 13526. Classified national security information violation can result in loss of clearance, termination, and criminal prosecution. Shapiro looked directly at Swalwell. You violated all three, Congressman. Repeatedly, systematically, for years. But it is not just that you leaked, Shapiro continued, his voice taking on an edge of anger for the first time. It is what you leaked, and why. Let me show you the damage. He pulled out intelligence community damage assessments, heavily redacted but with enough visible to convey harm. CIA operations in Russia compromised after you leaked details of their methods. NSA signals intelligence. Chinese and Russian intelligence services altered their communications after your leak revealed our capabilities. FBI counterintelligence. 3 investigations into foreign agents were blown after you leaked their existence. Shapiro's delivery accelerated to a machine gun pace. People died, Congressman. Intelligence assets were arrested. Operations that took years to develop were destroyed. All because you wanted to appear on cable news, all because you wanted to be seen as the insider with secrets, all because your ego mattered more than national security. He pulled out one specific case. July 2019, you attended a classified briefing about a CIA asset in Iran, providing intelligence about nuclear weapons development. That asset was codenamed Cardinal. 2 weeks later, details about Iranian nuclear intelligence appeared in the New York Times. The article did not name Cardinal, but it provided enough detail that Iranian counterintelligence could identify the source. Cardinal was arrested in August 2019. He was executed in January 2020. Shapiro set down the document with deliberate care. A human being died because you leaked classified information. His family was arrested. His associates were interrogated, all because you could not keep your mouth shut. The hearing room was deathly silent. Even Democrats looked horrified. But you did not just leak to hurt Trump, Shapiro continued. You leaked to help yourself. Let me show you the financial incentive. He pulled out speaking fee records. After each major leak that you appeared on television to discuss, your speaking fees increased. After particularly damaging leaks, you got book deal offers. Media companies paid you to be a contributor. Leak? Appear on TV. Get paid, that is not whistleblowing, Congressman. That is espionage for profit. Shapiro showed a timeline of leaks matched with Swalwell's income. 2017, 8 major leaks. Speaking fees $75,000. 2018, 12 major leaks. Speaking fees $120,000. 2019, 15 major leaks. Speaking fees $180,000. You monetized classified information. You turned state secrets into personal income. That is literally the definition of espionage. He closed the classified leaks section and looked at Swalwell with contempt. You swore an oath to protect classified information. You signed legal documents acknowledging the penalties. You sat in briefings where people's lives depended on secrecy, and you violated all of it. You leaked to reporters. You appeared on television, you got rich, and people died. But your classified leaks, as serious as they are, pale in comparison to your campaign finance fraud. Let us talk about the Chinese money you took, kept, and lied about. Let us discuss the felonies that are going to send you to prison. He opened the binder labeled Campaign Finance Fraud. This is where your career ends, Congressman. Ben Shapiro opened the 7th binder with clinical precision. Unlike the previous sections that mixed humiliation with allegations, this one was pure prosecutorial evidence. Congressman Swalwell, let us discuss your campaign finances. Specifically, let us discuss the foreign money you accepted, the straw donors you used, and the fraud you committed against the Federal Election Commission and American voters. He pulled out a donor list with hundreds of highlighted names. These are your campaign donors from 2012 to present. I have highlighted in red every donor with a Chinese surname or connection to Chinese organizations. Count them with me, 284 individual donors. Now that alone is not illegal. Many Chinese Americans are proud American citizens who have every right to donate to campaigns. But let us look closer. Shapiro pulled out a second list. These are the donors Christine Fang organized, recruited, or introduced to your campaigns. The FBI identified 73 specific donors in her network. Of those 73, how many did you return donations from after learning she was a Chinese spy? He paused for effect. 0. You kept every penny, $687,000 from a network organized by a Chinese intelligence operative, and you kept it all. That is not true, I returned. Swalwell protested. In 2020, Shapiro interrupted. You returned some donations in 2020 after Axios published the Fang story and after the FBI investigation became public. But you kept Chinese money from 2012 to 2028 years. You spent that money on campaigns, you won elections with that money, and you did it all while serving on the Intelligence Committee. Shapiro's delivery accelerated into a blur of facts. But here is where it gets criminal. Let me introduce you to the concept of straw donors. That is when someone gives money to a campaign using another person's name to circumvent contribution limits. It is a felony. Let me show you evidence of straw donors in your network. He pulled out FEC reports and bank records side by side. Donor Li Chen, listed occupation restaurant worker, listed income $32,000 per year, total political donations $5,800 to your campaign, the maximum allowed. Here are her bank records for the donation period. Shapiro displayed bank statements with numbers highlighted. January 15th, 2016. Deposit of $6,000 from consulting services. January 16th, 2016. $5,800 donation to Swalwell campaign. She earned $32,000 a year, Congressman. Where did she get $6,000 in consulting income? And why did she immediately donate 97% of it to you? He pulled out another example. Donor James Wu, listed occupation graduate student. Listed income $18,000 per year. Total donations $2,900. Here are his bank records. December 3rd, 2018. Deposit of $3,000 from gift. December 4th, 2018. $2,900 donation to your campaign. Shapiro began pulling out donor after donor, each one showing the same suspicious pattern. Low-income individuals making maximum donations immediately after receiving unexplained deposits. I have 47 donors showing this exact pattern, Shapiro stated. Low-income, maximum donation, immediately after suspicious deposit, that is not grassroots support. Congressman, that is money laundering. Someone was giving money to these donors specifically to donate to your campaign. Who was giving them money? Let us find out. Shapiro pulled out a network analysis chart that looked like a spiderweb of connections. These are the financial connections between your suspicious donors. 31 of them received money from the same 3 Chinese-American business organizations. Those organizations have documented ties to Chinese Communist Party, United Front Work Department operations. The FBI has been investigating these organizations for foreign agent violations since 2017. He pointed to specific nodes on the chart. California Chinese American Business Council donated to or paid 12 of your straw donors. Asian American Pacific Islander Political Alliance connected to 9 donors. Chinese American Heritage Foundation connected to 10 donors. All 3 organizations are currently under FBI investigation for functioning as unregistered foreign agents. Shapiro looked up at Swalwell. You took money from organizations being investigated as Chinese foreign agents, laundered through straw donors to circumvent contribution limits. That is, conspiracy to violate campaign finance law, that is accepting money from foreign agents. Those are both felonies. Congressman, I had no knowledge, Swalwell tried. You had FBI briefings, Shapiro shot back. In December 2014, the FBI briefed you about Chinese influence operations. They warned you about Christine Fang's fundraising network. They told you to scrutinize your donors, and you continued accepting money from the same network. No knowledge requires not being told. You were told. You did it anyway. Shapiro pulled out another document. But it is not just Chinese money. Let us talk about your wife, Sarah Swalwell. Her consulting firm, Swalwell Strategies, was paid $340,000 by your campaign from 2016 to 2023. What services did she provide? He displayed FEC disbursement records. Let me read the descriptions. Strategic consulting, media relations, digital strategy, very vague, very convenient. Let me show you what she actually did. Shapiro pulled out Swalwell Strategies business filings. According to California business records, Swalwell Strategies had 1 employee, Sarah Swalwell. No office, no other clients, no digital footprint. It existed solely to receive money from your campaign. Congressman, that is called conversion of campaign funds to personal use. It is a felony. My wife provided legitimate. Swalwell protested. Show me 1 deliverable, Shapiro challenged. 1 strategic document, 1 media plan, 1 piece of digital content. Show me any evidence that $340,000 in payments produced any actual work. The silence confirmed there was nothing to show. You paid your wife $340,000 in campaign money for phantom consulting services, Shapiro stated. That is fraud. But it gets worse. Let us look at how that money was spent. He pulled out credit card records. Swalwell Strategies credit card expenses. $47,000 at Nordstrom, $23,000 at luxury hotels, $15,000 at restaurants, WIT, $000 at a spa. Congressman, your campaign paid your wife's company $340,000, and she spent it on personal luxuries. That is conversion of campaign funds. That is criminal. Shapiro pulled out FEC complaint forms. The Campaign Legal Center filed a complaint about your wife's payments in 2020. The National Legal and Policy Center filed a complaint about your Chinese donors in 2021. The Foundation for Accountability and Civic Trust filed a complaint about your straw donors in 2022. 3 separate complaints, all documented, all with evidence. Want to know what happened to them? He pulled out FEC correspondence. All 3 complaints were dismissed by the FEC without investigation. Why? Because the FEC had 3 Democratic commissioners and 3 Republican commissioners. Tie votes mean no action. The Democratic commissioners voted to dismiss complaints against you every time. You were protected, Congressman, protected by partisan commissioners who put party over law. But that protection ends now, Shapiro said, his voice hardening. Because I am not an FEC commissioner, I am a private citizen with a platform and evidence. And all of this evidence, every donor list, every bank record, every FEC complaint, every FBI document is being uploaded to my website right now. 4.8 million people are watching this hearing live. They can see the evidence, they can see your crimes, and they can demand actual accountability. Shapiro closed the campaign finance fraud binder and sat back slightly. You took foreign money. You used straw donors. You paid your wife campaign funds for fake consulting. You converted campaign money to personal use. You did all of this while serving on the Intelligence Committee, while being compromised by Chinese intelligence, while leaking classified information. Congressman, you are not just corrupt, you are a one-man crime wave. He reached for his final binder, labeled Criminal Referrals. And now, it is time for consequences. The hearing room had transformed over the course of 3 hours. What began as Eric Swalwell's planned interrogation of a conservative media figure had become something closer to a criminal trial where the prosecutor was destroying the defendant on live television. Swalwell sat slumped in his committee chair. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. His 3 staffers had long since stopped whispering advice. There was no defense left, and his remaining attorney looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Ben Shapiro opened his final binder with the finality of someone delivering a closing argument. Let me summarize for the committee, for the media, and for the 8 million Americans watching this live. Eric Swalwell, Congressman from California, member of the House Intelligence Committee, Chinese spy, slept with her, kept contact after FBI warnings, kept Chinese money. Security clearance should have been revoked but protected by partisan leadership. Presidential campaign, 0% polling, $853,000 wasted. Fraud on donors. Nuclear threats. Threatened American citizens with nukes for disagreeing with gun control. Classified leaks. 47 documented instances. People died. Monetized state secrets. Campaign finance fraud. Foreign money. Straw donors. Wife's phantom consulting. Conversion of funds. Shapiro's delivery was machine gun speed, each accusation landing like a hammer blow. That is not a career, Congressman. That is a criminal enterprise. And I have recommendations for this committee. Republican Ranking Member Jim Jordan leaned forward. Mr. Shapiro, you have presented serious allegations with substantial evidence. What would you recommend this committee do? Shapiro did not hesitate. Immediate referral to the FBI for investigation of campaign finance violations, conversion of funds, and straw donor schemes. Immediate referral to the Department of Justice for investigation of unauthorized disclosure of classified information under 18 U.S. Code 793 and 798. Immediate revocation of security clearance based on foreign contacts and compromised status. Immediate removal from House Intelligence Committee. And frankly, immediate resignation from Congress. The hearing room erupted. Republicans applauded. Democrats looked stunned. Media members were frantically typing. But then, something unexpected happened. Representative Abigail Spanberger, a Democrat from Virginia and former CIA officer, raised her hand. Chairman Nadler recognized her. Mr. Shapiro, Spanberger began, her voice careful but clear. I have served in intelligence. I understand classification. I understand the damage that leaks cause. And I have to say, I find your evidence regarding classified information disclosures deeply disturbing. She turned to look at Swalwell. Eric, I have known you for years. We have worked together. But if half of what Mr. Shapiro has documented is accurate, and it appears to be sourced and verifiable, then you should not have a security clearance. You should not be on the Intelligence Committee, and there should be an investigation. The defection was stunning. A Democrat, a former CIA officer, agreeing with Shapiro's assessment on national television. Swalwell looked physically struck. I move, Spanberger continued, that this committee vote to refer Congressman Swalwell to the House Ethics Committee for investigation of the allegations Mr. Shapiro has presented today. Second, came a voice from the Republican side immediately. Chairman Nadler looked uncomfortable. This is highly irregular. No more irregular than a sitting congressman sleeping with a Chinese spy, Jordan interjected. Call the vote, Mr. Chairman. The tension in the room was suffocating. Nadler clearly wanted to protect Swalwell, but with a bipartisan motion and cameras rolling, he had no choice. All in favor of referring Congressman Swalwell to the Ethics Committee? Every Republican hand shot up. Then Spanberger's hand rose. Then another Democrat. Then another. The final vote was 8-4, with 3 Democrats joining all Republicans. Swalwell tried to speak, but his voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. This is a political witch hunt, this is. It is called evidence, Congressman. Shapiro interrupted quietly. You are familiar with the concept? Documents, timelines, facts. The things you have been avoiding your entire career. You will pay for this, Shapiro, Swalwell said, his voice rising with anger and desperation. You will. Is that another threat? Shapiro asked calmly. Like the nuke threat? I am unarmed, so you will not need nuclear weapons, but I am recording, so please continue threatening me on camera. It will make a great addition to the ethics complaint. The exchange captured everything. Swalwell's authoritarian instinct to threaten anyone who exposed him. Shapiro's clinical fearlessness in the face of power. Mr. Chairman, came another voice, Republican Representative Nancy Mace. I move that we also vote to recommend immediate revocation of Congressman Swalwell's security clearance pending the ethics investigation. Second, Jordan said immediately. This is outrageous, a Democrat protested. You cannot call the vote, Mace insisted. Nadler reluctantly called for the vote. This time it was closer, 6-6, with Spanberger and one other Democrat joining Republicans. But a tie meant the motion failed. Shapiro remained seated, calm, clinical. He had made his case. The evidence was public. The defections had begun. Whether the committee acted or not, the court of public opinion was watching. Mr. Shapiro, Chairman Nadler said, eager to end the hearing. Do you have any final statements? Just one observation, Shapiro said, standing for the first time since the hearing began. He gathered his binders, stacking them with the same methodical care he had shown throughout. Congressman Swalwell began today by calling me a right-wing provocateur spreading disinformation. I responded by presenting facts, sources, documents, timelines, and evidence. He had nothing but deflections, threats, and silence. That is the difference between someone who seeks truth and someone who fears it. Shapiro picked up his stack of binders. Every document I referenced today is now public. Every allegation is sourced. Every timeline is verifiable. The American people do not need media filters or political spin. They can examine the evidence themselves and draw their own conclusions. He turned to look directly at Swalwell. Congressman, you said I would pay for this, but I am not the one who slept with a Chinese spy. I am not the one who leaked classified information. I am not the one who committed campaign finance fraud. I am not the one under ethics investigation. You did all of that. And the only thing I did was document it. If truth is something you think people should pay for, then you have fundamentally misunderstood American values. Shapiro headed toward the exit, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Congressman? That 0% polling in your presidential race? It is starting to make sense? Nobody wanted to vote for you because deep down, America knew something was wrong. They could not articulate it. They did not have evidence. But they knew. Today, I gave them the receipts. Good luck with your re-election campaign. As Shapiro walked out of the hearing room, the chaos erupted fully. Republicans were calling for criminal investigations. Democrats were scrambling to distance themselves. Media members were filing stories with headlines that had shifted 180 degrees from their prepared narratives. And Eric Swalwell sat alone at his committee seat, his career effectively over, destroyed, not by political opposition, but by documented evidence delivered at rapid-fire pace by a commentator he had tried to humiliate. The last image captured by cameras was Swalwell being helped up by staffers, his hands shaking, his face pale as he stumbled toward the exit of a hearing room where he had intended to be the prosecutor, but had ended up as the convicted. Outside, Shapiro gave a brief statement to swarming media. Facts do not care about your feelings. Evidence does not care about political protection. Truth does not care about Eric Swalwell's career. Today was about accountability. The evidence is public. Americans can judge for themselves. He walked away without taking questions. His job done. His evidence deployed. His case complete. Behind him, the wreckage of a congressional career smoldered in real time. 48 hours after Ben Shapiro's testimony destroyed Eric Swalwell in front of 4.8 million live viewers and countless more through viral clips, the consequences began cascading with unprecedented speed. The video became the most watched congressional hearing in American history. Every major news outlet had to cover it, even those sympathetic to Democrats. The evidence was too documented, too sourced, too public to ignore. Within 24 hours, Number Swalwell Crimes was trending globally. Within 48 hours, conservative media had created compilation videos of every damning moment. Within a week, law schools were discussing it in legal ethics classes as a masterclass in evidence presentation. The FBI, already investigating some of Swalwell's campaign finances, expanded their investigation. Within days of the hearing, federal prosecutors opened a grand jury investigation into classified information leaks. The House Ethics Committee, forced to act by bipartisan vote and public pressure, announced a comprehensive investigation. But the political pressure moved faster than official investigations. Within a week, 3 Democrats had called for Swalwell to resign. Within 2 weeks, 10 Democrats had joined them. Within 3 weeks, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries quietly suggested to Swalwell that he might want to consider spending more time with family. The campaign finance revelations hit hardest. The FEC, embarrassed by public evidence that they had dismissed legitimate complaints for partisan reasons, reopened 3 separate investigations. When their own analysis confirmed Shapiro's findings about straw donors, they levied a record $1.2 million fine against Swalwell's campaign, the largest campaign finance penalty in House history. But money was not Swalwell's biggest problem. The Chinese spy scandal, already known but somehow normalized, became radioactive after Shapiro's timeline presentation. The FBI confirmed that Swalwell had maintained contact with Fang Fang longer than previously disclosed. They confirmed the fundraising network had Chinese intelligence connections. They confirmed that Swalwell should never have been allowed on the Intelligence Committee after being compromised. 2 months after the hearing, Speaker Mike Johnson made the decision that Democratic leadership had refused to make. He removed Swalwell from the Intelligence Committee by majority vote. The final tally was 217 to 212, with 3 Democrats joining Republicans. One of those Democrats was Abigail Spanberger, who gave a floor speech explaining her vote. "National security is not partisan," Spanberger said from the House floor. "Security clearances are not political favors. When someone is compromised by foreign intelligence, they lose access to secrets. Period. That is not Republican or Democrat. That is basic security protocol that should apply to everyone. I wish my Democratic colleagues had enforced this standard years ago. We failed. I am voting to correct that failure." Her speech went viral among national security professionals who had been quietly horrified by Swalwell's continued committee service. 3 months after the hearing, Eric Swalwell held a press conference announcing he would not seek re-election in 2024. He framed it as wanting to spend time with family and pursue opportunities in the private sector. But everyone knew the truth. He was being forced out. His approval ratings in his district had collapsed. A Democratic primary challenger was already running attack ads featuring Shapiro's evidence. Major donors had abandoned him. Speaking opportunities had dried up, and MSNBC had quietly ended his contributor contract. "I am proud of my service to California and to this nation," Swalwell said in his resignation announcement, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "I have fought for gun safety, for accountability, for justice, and I am confident that history will judge my work fairly." But history was already judging. Law schools were teaching his case as what not to do. Intelligence professionals were using him as an example of compromised officials. Ethics watchdogs were citing his career as evidence of partisan double standards, and conservative media was treating getting Swalwelled as shorthand for being destroyed by documented evidence. The FBI's investigation expanded to include his wife's consulting firm. Federal prosecutors began examining whether campaign funds had been converted to personal use, and the IRS opened an investigation into whether the consulting payments had been properly reported as income. The walls were closing in from multiple directions, but perhaps the most devastating consequence was cultural. Shapiro had proved something that conservatives had long suspected: that, with enough preparation, documentation, and platform, a private citizen could hold corrupt officials accountable, even when institutions failed. His model: meticulous research, public evidence dumps, rapid-fire presentation, modern media distribution, became a template. Within months, other commentators and journalists were building evidence binders on other officials. The accountability mechanism had shifted from institutions, which could be politically captured, to distributed public evidence, which could not be suppressed. Swalwell had become the test case for a new form of citizen oversight. Shapiro himself avoided gloating. He returned to his Daily Wire show, mentioned the hearing briefly, then moved on to other topics. When asked in interviews why he had been so effective, his answer was characteristically direct. "I just prepared, I researched, I sourced everything. I presented facts in a clear, organized manner. That is not some revolutionary technique. That is basic intellectual responsibility." The only reason it seemed remarkable is because so few people in media and politics actually do it anymore. They deal in narratives, emotions, tribal signaling. "I dealt in evidence. Evidence won." But in private moments captured by a Daily Wire behind-the-scenes documentary, Shapiro reflected more thoughtfully on what the hearing represented. "Swalwell thought he could intimidate me with congressional power," Shapiro said to his production team. "He thought his position gave him authority over truth. But power does not determine facts. Evidence determines facts. And when you are armed with evidence, you do not need power. The truth is its own authority." He paused, then added, "That is what they do not understand. They think politics is about who has more institutional power, more media allies, more political protection. But there is a higher power than all of that. Reality, facts, truth. I did not destroy Swalwell's career. Reality destroyed it. I just made sure reality was documented and public." 6 months after the hearing, federal prosecutors announced indictments. Eric Swalwell was charged with conspiracy to violate campaign finance laws. 3 counts: conversion of campaign funds to personal use, 4 counts, and making false statements to the FEC, 7 counts. His wife was charged with conspiracy and fraud. Maximum sentences totaled 37 years, though plea negotiations began immediately. Swalwell maintained his innocence, calling the charges political persecution and a right-wing witch hunt. But the evidence came from his own FEC filings, his own bank records, his own campaign disclosures. There was nothing political about math and documents. The classified leaks investigation took longer, as it always does with classified information. But CIA, NSA, and FBI counterintelligence all confirmed that leaks had occurred, that they had caused damage, and that Swalwell had motive, opportunity, and means. Whether prosecutors could prove it beyond reasonable doubt remained to be seen, but his intelligence career was over regardless. A year after the hearing, political scientists and journalists were still analyzing its impact. It had changed how congressional hearings were covered, with more focus on evidence and less on performative questioning. It had changed how citizens engaged with politics, with more demand for sourced claims. It had changed how politicians approached accountability, knowing that private citizens with platforms could now do what institutional media often failed to do: document corruption. But the most important change was simpler. Nobody underestimated preparation anymore. Swalwell had walked into that hearing expecting to humiliate a commentator. He had been armed with talking points, prepared questions, friendly media. Shapiro had been armed with 8 binders, hundreds of documents, and the receipts for every allegation. Facts had defeated power, evidence had defeated position, truth had defeated corruption. As Shapiro summarized in his year-later reflection on the hearing, Eric Swalwell's career ended because he forgot something fundamental. In America, we do not have lords and peasants. We do not have officials who are above accountability. We have citizens who can demand answers, gather evidence, and expose corruption. I was just one citizen who did the homework. Turns out, that is all it takes. In federal prison, where Swalwell would eventually spend 4 years after pleading guilty to reduced charges, other inmates would occasionally recognize him. "Hey, you are that guy who got destroyed by Ben Shapiro?" they would say, not with sympathy, but with the casual acknowledgement that facts do not care about your feelings and evidence does not care about your career. The last word belonged to Abigail Spanberger, who won re-election easily after her principled stand. In a speech at Georgetown University, she reflected on the Shapiro-Swalwell hearing. "I think what struck me most was not Mr. Shapiro's performance, though it was impressive. It was how little defense my Democratic colleagues could mount. They wanted to defend Eric. Partisan loyalty demanded it, but the evidence was overwhelming, and I realized we had spent years protecting him not because he was innocent, but because acknowledging his guilt meant acknowledging our own failure to hold him accountable. Mr. Shapiro forced us to confront that failure publicly. It was uncomfortable, it was humiliating, but it was necessary." She paused, then delivered the lesson. "The next time we are tempted to protect a colleague for partisan reasons, I will remember Eric Swalwell's face during that hearing. I will remember what happens when evidence confronts corruption, and I will choose accountability over party loyalty, because in the end, facts do not care about your career, but they should shape your conscience. Ultimately, facts remain indifferent to one's emotions. Evidence is unconcerned with career trajectories, and truth holds no regard for political authority." Ben Shapiro spent 3 hours demonstrating this reality. Eric Swalwell spent 3 hours enduring it, and the nation witnessed the entire sequence unfold in real time.